Well, I'm working for some Forms customers, as you know, that planned for 5 years, for 10 years, for a long, long time. So we're looking forward now for Forms 14. But are you already planning to go beyond 14? Will there be a Forms 15, a Forms 16, or will there be like 4 or 5 releases with 14? What are your plans? Could you give us some perspective or some visions you might have beyond 2030 or however Forms 14 will take time?
You're going pretty far out there now. So I can't really speak to what's going to happen after 14 just yet. We probably won't be able to get too involved in what that means until after we deliver 14.
Okay.
However, keep in mind what we were just speaking of was that 14 is anticipated to have at least 8 years of support,
Yeah.
5 years of premier support and 3 years of extended support. There's always a possibility that will get extended out further, just depending upon where we are at that time. What we will normally do is, once we complete the current version, which is 14, we will automatically begin working on the next version. So by the time I go back to my home office, we'll be working on the next version as we speak. So while you're anticipating 14, I'll be working on the next one.
Okay.
So we're always working one version ahead of wherever you might be.
Okay, we have to wait a little bit to know more. But the question is, what can we do today? We have Forms 12. Some users even have Forms 6 still in production. So what do you recommend them? They have, for instance, 12.2.1.4 now for a long time. Should they shift to the new version that recently came out? Should they wait for Forms 14? Can you give us some pro cons? What you would recommend them?
Moving to 12.2.1.19 would be my preferred next step. For customers who tend to take advantage of the ability to upgrade rather than doing new installations, I am anticipating that the upgrade path from a previous version to 14 likely will force you to start at 12.2.1.4 or 12.2.1.19.
Okay.
So if you're not already on one of those two versions, then you will not be able to upgrade to 14. You will have to start with a brand new installation and a brand new set of configurations, and it's a little bit more complicated, whereas upgrading is typically pretty simple.
Yeah. And I know that in the latest Forms version, 12.2.1.19, you included all the former patches of Forms 12.
Right.
Will these patches also shift to 14? Will you be sure that a bug which is fixed in 12.2.1.19 is also fixed in 14.1.2, or is there a difference in that context?
Actually, the way we do things, all bug fixes are fixed in the newest first.
Yeah.
So before you ever see a patch, we've already corrected the issue in the version that hasn't been released yet. So if, for example, there's 20 new bug fixes in 12.2.1.19, the new version, or 14, already contains those fixes,
Yeah.
plus any new ones that may happen between now and the time we
Yeah.
release. So yes, the next version should include everything you see today, plus whatever else new comes along between now and then.
Yeah. Well, one last but important questions I get from time to time from IT management. They don't know about Forms. Forms is 44 years old now, getting older and older, and we celebrate probably in 2029 the 50th anniversary of Forms. We can already prepare for that. But they ask, is there a future for Forms? Will you start new projects with Oracle Forms? And what decisions do you need to make to make to find the right path for the future? So if I come to you and you're a Forms development responsible person from Oracle, and I ask you, I will try to do a new data entry tool. Should I choose Forms, or should I choose Angular? Should I choose Apex? There are so many tools around. Why should I choose Forms? Or is Forms reliable? Would it be a tool for the future? Can you help us a little bit to find to make the right decisions in this difficult process?
Right. So that's funny. I am often presented with similar questions to that. That's not uncommon at all, and I think my answer has remained pretty consistent, and that is that deciding on what application development technology you would like to use is partially based on answers to questions that you nor I can answer, right? Questions like, what is the skill set of the application development team? What is the use case? What problem are you trying to solve? Based on the answers to those questions, you'll be able to better understand what the right tool is. Apex might be the appropriate tool. Forms might be the appropriate tool. Some other, like you mentioned Angular, maybe Angular is the appropriate tool. It just depends on what you're trying to solve, right? And again, for people that follow me, they've heard me say this before. If I'm constructing a home, a new building,
yeah,
I'm not going to show up at the job site with just a hammer. I'm going to have a toolbox full of different tools. And depending upon the job at hand, I'm going to choose the correct tool for the job at hand. And this is kind of the same thing. We have many customers that have a belief that being on what they call bleeding edge technology is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We have other customers that believe if it's not broken, don't fix it. So that's a pretty broad spectrum. So you really have to understand what problem you're trying to solve before you make that leap, because if you make the leap just because you want something that looks prettier,
yeah,
you might find that you can't get the job done anymore.
Okay.
And that's a very dangerous business decision to
Yeah.
make. So you have to choose very carefully when you're looking at that.
Yeah. Can you, as the last question, sum up some of the very big benefits Forms brings around, benefits against other tools or other technologies, where you can say this is a standalone possibility with Forms to use features you can't do with anything else. Can you give us some, to sum up, some recommendations when Forms is the best selection?
So for years we've talked about how valuable the transactional processing part of Forms has made it kind of a unique technology.
Yeah.
And even the statefulness of it. We have a lot of customers that actually complain they don't like the fact that it's stateful. But it's the statefulness that gives us the ability to so carefully and accurately and reliably do transaction processing. But even beyond that, at a higher level, I guess you could say, is our ability to interact on the client tier. So a web page is bound to a browser and generally can't do anything outside the browser, with only a few exceptions. With Forms, given the right Forms application developer, you could interact with the client machine no differently than any other tool that's installed on the client machine. And that's pretty powerful, because that means you could even access the hardware. And we've had a lot of customers do some creative development where their Forms application talks to hardware connected to the client machine. And you really can't do that with a web application without creating a whole bunch of network traffic going back and forth to the server, sending messages to the hardware separately. So there's a lot of power there that I think gets overlooked, and I think customers should carefully look at the tool that you're going to choose for whatever the responsibility is or use case that you're trying to solve is.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mike,
you
for that interview. Thank you
you
for being in Germany again. And
thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
For your big support.
Thank you so much. Thank you.